Did you know that in a single day, U.S. Border Patrol can encounter more people than the entire population of some small towns in America? Immigration to the United States continues to be one of the most complex and divisive issues facing our nation today. Before we jump into our countdown, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. And if you find this information valuable, smash that like button. It really helps the channel reach more people. Let's get started with our countdown. 10. India. At number 10 is India. While most people don't immediately associate India with illegal immigration to the US, Border Patrol has reported a substantial increase in Indian nationals attempting unauthorized entry. Many are fleeing economic hardship or religious persecution, with most taking a dangerous route flying to South America first, then making the treacherous trek north through multiple countries and the Darien Gap jungle between Colombia and Panama. What makes this trend concerning is the extreme danger of this journey. Imagine traveling halfway around the world only to face one of the most perilous migration routes on the planet. 9. Brazil. Number 9 brings us to Brazil. Recent years have seen economic instability, political turmoil, and rising crime rates push more Brazilians to seek opportunities abroad. Unlike other nationalities, many Brazilians initially enter the US legally on tourist visas, but overstay their allowed time. Cities like Boston, Newark, and parts of Florida have sizable Brazilian-American communities that provide cultural familiarity and employment networks. One interesting challenge is that Brazilians speak Portuguese rather than Spanish, creating additional linguistic barriers during processing and integration. 8. Venezuela. At number 8 is Venezuela, a country experiencing one of the most dramatic economic collapses in modern history. Hyperinflation reached mind-boggling levels at one point, exceeding 130,000% annually. This economic disaster, coupled with political repression and shortages of food and medicine, has driven nearly 8 million Venezuelans to flee their homeland, with thousands crossing the southern U.S. border monthly. What's particularly noteworthy is how quickly this crisis developed. Just 15 years ago, Venezuela was one of the wealthiest countries in South America. Now, professionals like doctors and engineers are walking thousands of miles through dangerous terrain for a chance at safety. 7. Nicaragua. Number 7 is Nicaragua, where President Daniel Ortega's government has cracked down on political opposition since 2018. Leading to human rights abuses and economic deterioration. What makes Nicaragua's case interesting is how rapidly it transformed from a country with relatively low immigration to one of the top sources of migrants. In fiscal year 2023, encounters with Nicaraguan nationals increased by over 200% compared to previous years. Unlike some other Central American migrants, Nicaraguans often arrive with more economic resources and higher education levels, reflecting the middle-class exodus occurring due to political persecution. 6. Colombia. At number 6 is Colombia. Despite making remarkable progress since the days of cartel violence and civil conflict, Colombia has seen increasing numbers of citizens heading north. Several factors drive this migration: high unemployment, especially among young people, a fragile peace process with FARC rebels, and the strain of hosting nearly 2 million Venezuelan refugees. Colombian migrants take diverse routes. Many cross through the Darien Gap and Central America, while others fly to Mexico first. The Colombian diaspora in cities like Miami and Orlando creates networks that facilitate new arrivals, a textbook example of how migration patterns become self-reinforcing. 5. Ecuador. At number 5, Ecuador has become a surprisingly significant source of unauthorized immigration following the COVID-19 pandemic, which caused severe economic contraction with unemployment rates skyrocketing. Rising crime rates and gang violence in cities like Guayaquil and Quito have added to the push factors. What's interesting is how Ecuador transitioned from primarily being a transit country to becoming a major source country itself. For Ecuadorians, the journey north is exceptionally arduous. often requiring passage through the notorious Darien Gap, one of the world's most dangerous jungles, where both terrain and criminal groups pose serious threats. 4. Cuba. 4 is Cuba, with its long and complicated history of migration to the United States. Recent years have seen a notable surge in Cubans attempting to reach the U.S., with many now choosing land routes through Central America rather than the dangerous sea crossing. This shift came after the end of the wet foot, dry foot policy in 2017, which had previously granted Cubans who reached U.S. soil a pathway to legal residency. Now, many Cubans travel through countries like Nicaragua, which doesn't require visas for Cubans, before continuing north. The driving factors are clear. Cuba's economy has struggled tremendously, with food shortages, medicine scarcity, and frequent power outages. Political repression continues, particularly after protests in 2021 were met with harsh government crackdowns. Cuba's situation perfectly illustrates how policy changes dramatically alter migration routes. When one door closes, people find new paths. 3. Honduras. Breaking into our top 3 at number 3 is Honduras, a nation with one of the highest murder rates in the world outside of active war zones. Gang violence permeates daily life in many communities, while approximately 60% of the population lives in poverty. Environmental disasters, including devastating hurricanes in 2020, have further destabilized communities. What makes the Honduran migration story particularly heart-wrenching is how many families and unaccompanied minors make this journey. Parents often face the impossible choice of keeping children in dangerous conditions or sending them north in hopes of a safer future. Honduras has been at the center of several migrant caravans in recent years, large groups traveling together for safety. These caravans have become powerful symbols in the immigration debate, though they represent only a fraction of overall migration flows. 2. Guatemala. At number 2, Guatemala continues to be a major source of unauthorized immigration to the United States. Nearly half the children under 5 experience chronic malnutrition, one of the highest rates in the world. Violence remains a serious concern, with extortion, gang activity, and domestic violence pushing many to flee. Migration is particularly high from indigenous Maya communities in the Western Highlands, areas that have faced historical marginalization. Environmental factors also play an increasingly significant role, as Guatemala is among the countries most vulnerable to climate change. Imagine being a farmer whose family has worked the same land for generations, only to find that unpredictable weather now makes it impossible to feed your family. The Guatemala-U.S. migration corridor is well established, with significant Guatemalan communities in cities like Los Angeles and Chicago, providing networks that facilitate new arrivals. 1. Mexico. At number 1, Mexico remains the largest single-source country for unauthorized immigrants despite significant changes in migration patterns over the past decade. The shared 1,954-mile border continues to make Mexico the most common origin for new, unauthorized entries. Today's Mexican migrants are more likely to be fleeing violence in states affected by cartel activity rather than simply seeking economic opportunities. What makes Mexico unique is the deep historical and cultural connections between our nations. Mexican communities have been part of what is now the United States since before current borders were established. Recent years have also seen Mexico take on a new role as both a source and transit country, with Mexican authorities under pressure to limit northward migration from Central America. This has transformed Mexico's immigration policies and created humanitarian challenges within its own borders. There you have it, the top 10 countries where unauthorized immigrants in the United States are coming from. Behind every statistic are human beings making difficult choices based on complex circumstances. Understanding these patterns helps us move beyond simplistic narratives and recognize the diverse factors from violence and political instability to economic hardship and environmental disasters that drive people to leave everything behind. If you found this information valuable, Please hit that like button and subscribe for more in-depth explorations of today's most important issues. Drop a comment with topics you'd like to see covered next.